There's one piece of jewelry that has eluded the Cincinnati Bengals franchise since its conception. But could this be the year where they finally lift the coveted Vince Lombardi Trophy? Since its establishment in 1967, the Cincinnati Bengals have reached the Super Bowl 3 times. Twice in the 1980s and once last season when they lost to the Los Angeles Rams in a close one. In fact, all their Super Bowl losses were a one-score deficit. That is how close they came to winning it, and the margin with which they lost is so heartbreaking that it adds to the weight of the loss. But this season, the pain has turned into focused fuel, where the Bengals are at the top of their division with 8 wins along with Lamar Jackson's Baltimore Ravens. Due to tiebreakers, the Bengals find themselves in the wildcard spot and are 2 games ahead of the Patriots, who find themselves are out of the playoff picture. The Bengals have a 2-game cushion, but a very tough schedule ahead. After facing the Cleveland Browns at home, they are on the road to play the Buccaneers in Tampa Bay and then the Patriots in New England. These are tough away fixtures because in both cases, you don't know what the climate is going to be. Whether it will be throwing friendly or will they be knee-deep in snow. Now, going away to face the Patriots is always a tough task against Coach Belichick's crew, especially when the season is dwindling down to the nitty-gritty and they are in playoff contention. If the Bengals manage to dispose of the Browns like they are expected to and then win both away games, then they set themselves up well for the following 2 games, which are arguably the toughest ones for any team in the NFL. The Bengals will host both Josh Allen's Buffalo Bills and then Lamar Jackson's Baltimore Ravens in the final week. Now, that clash with the Ravens could determine the seeding for the playoffs and who gets home field advantage for a few games. But then you have to wonder, does home field advantage in the playoffs mean anything to the Bengals? Last season, Cincinnati had 1 home game in the wildcard playoff round, then the next 2 were away to the much-fancied Tennessee Titans. And then they traveled to Kansas City to face the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, whom they beat in overtime. In both wins, it was largely due to the calm and precision play of their quarterback, Joe Burrow. Nicknamed Joe Burr for his ice-cold nature, the Cincinnati star quarterback is having an incredible season despite a rocky start. In his first 4 games of the season, Burrow had a pass completion percentage of 64.35%, scored 8 touchdowns, and had 4 interceptions. He was also sacked 16 times. Now that number is massive compared to his stats in the last 4 games, where Burrow had a pass completion percentage of 70.05%, scoring 8 touchdowns and throwing away 2 interceptions. And more importantly, he was only sacked 5 times. So that tells us that the Bengals offensive line has finally found a way to give their quarterback more time in the pocket. More time leads to better execution, which leads to wins. Joe Burrow is heating up at the right time. There is momentum with this Bengals team, and it starts from the most prestigious position on the field. Joe Burrow continues to raise eyebrows and excel, but he has a supporting cast to thank. But who are the players making Joe Burrow look cool under pressure? Well, the one man who has played in just about every game but one for the Bengals this season is none other than wide receiver T. Higgins. Predominantly listed as the number 2 wide receiver on the roster, Higgins could easily be considered a number 1 target man for any team in the NFL. His stats so far this season have been impressive. 60 receptions for 861 yards, scoring 5 touchdowns with a catch completion percentage of 70.6%, which just so happens to be his highest percentage in his young NFL career. At 6 feet 4 inches, Higgins has the height to snatch balls over cornerbacks, and he also has the speed to leave them in his dust. He's an incredible asset to have on the team, and given his performances lately, where in the last 4 games he had scored 2 touchdowns, averaging 89.25 reception yards per game, is actually really pretty good. Now, admittedly, the reception yards did suffer in the last game against the Chiefs, where Higgins had only 35 yards, but did score. The reason for that sudden drop-off was attributed to the return of their star wide receiver from injury. Ja'Marr Chase is back and ready to connect with Joe Burrow's passes, as they did back when the two were playing college ball at LSU. Chase missed 5 games due to a hip injury, but returned to play a key role in the most recent game against the Chiefs, where he had 97 yards from 7 receptions and a catch completion percentage of 87.5%. It was his highest catch completion stat all season. Chase's best games were right before his injury, Away to the New Orleans Saints, he had a catch completion percentage of 70%, earning 132 yards and scoring 2 touchdowns. He repeated a similar statistical feat the following week against Atlanta, where he had a catch completion percentage of 72.7%, earning this time 130 yards and scoring 2 touchdowns. Chase was on a hot streak before being sidelined with a nasty injury that kept him out for a pretty long time. So one can only imagine the numbers he would have put up with Joe Burrow, who was getting better protection from the pocket. But it is best to remain in the present and just focus on the good news that for now, Chase is back and on the incline, which brings a big smile to Bengals faces, but he isn't the only Bengal who fans want to see back in action. So who is this missing player that holds the key to opening up the passing game? Well, it's your friend and mine, Joe Mixon. The running back has missed some time due to a concussion, but before his departure, Mixon was the most productive offensive player on the Bengals. Mixon, like his teammates, also suffered from a slow start, but picked up the pace where he now has 605 yards from 158 rush attempts, scoring 6 touchdowns. He also has 41 receptions for 314 yards and an additional 2 touchdowns. That is 8 touchdowns in total, making him the player who has scored the most on this Bengals team. But since suffering a concussion in Week 11 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, the running back's absence has been felt, as the Bengals went from a team who can score from any position to a pass-heavy offense. With Mixon gone, it takes away the play-action calls which are so vital to achieving success in opening up players like Lamar Chase and T. Higgins down the field. But of course, football isn't solely dependent on how the offense plays. So just how good is this Cincinnati Bengals defense? Well, it's a pretty decent defense that is ranked 9th in total yards allowed per game and tied for 3rd in the least passing touchdowns per game, along with the New York Jets and the meanest defense in the NFL, the San Francisco 49ers. The Bengals team stats are decent. They have forced 9 fumbles and recovered all 9 of them, but they only have 19 sacks on the season and 8 interceptions. Now that sack stat is almost dead last, as the Bengals are only better in that category than the Atlanta Falcons and the Chicago Bears. The Bengals are not taking down quarterbacks, and as a result are not forcing many errors, but pressuring the quarterback leads to poor throws, which could result in interceptions, and so far the Bengals are in the middle of the pack when it comes to getting turnovers from opposing quarterbacks. But should their defensive middle ground stop them from reaching the Super Bowl? There's no cause for concern, since the Bengals have a strong quartet offensively in quarterback Joe Burrow, wide receivers T. Higgins and Lamar Chase, and in running back Joe Mixon. When all 4 are on the field, there is no one that can slow them down. The Bengals have the weapons offensively to put up big numbers and a defense that can hold the opposition to just a few yards, even if they can't always get to the quarterback. So what should excite Bengals fans the most is that this team is heating up at the right time and getting their star players back for a crucial set of games that will determine the trajectory of their playoff and Super Bowl path. The Bengal fan base must be thrilled to know that their team is once again on the precipice of achieving something magical if they can just stay healthy from now until they potentially lift that Vince Lombardi Trophy. We can't clearly see anyone in the NFL that has the might to stop this offensive juggernaut. So do you believe that the Bengals will reach the Super Bowl? Do you think they can finally win it this season? Please let us know in the comments down below. But before you go, if you still want to watch awesome NFL content like this, please go ahead and watch the next video that will pop on your screen. Pop